Ladies and gentlemen, next we have a panel discussion which is going to be chaired by Mr. Rajshekhar Datta Roy, who is the global head at Microsoft Dynamics and Digital Platforms Retail, Sonata Software. And he will be joined by Ms. Divya Kumar, who was the Global Digital CFO, IKEA Retail, along with Mr. Akhil Vishwanathan. He's the VP IT Walmart Global Tech India, along with Mr. Subbu Swaminathan, the VP Product and Engineering Commerce Company India Tech Rakuten. And what they are going to discuss is extremely interesting. They are going to talk about disrupting retail through digital transformation and innovation. So Rajshekhar, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Good to have all of you together and to discuss something which is very interesting as well as, I think, fairly relevant in today's time. So, and like all of us who have been in the industry, we are seeing these changes in retail, in consumer goods, whether it's on the changes of the behavior or the retailers changing their various aspects of their strategy, online and offline, supply side constraints, changes in consumer behavior. So I'll quickly like to take all your views and have a very interesting conversation about the various aspects, and so that we can cover everything in some parts. So I think first, starting off with Divya, if I can quickly ask you from your perspective, what do you see from a retail consumer good in terms of the key trends driving from an enterprise and an organization standpoint, from the industry standpoint that you can look at?
Thanks, Raj. Interesting to start with that always.
Yeah.
The last 10 years have been so disruptive in this entire space, both in retail and I think in consumer products, because especially because the consumer behavior has changed so drastically. I'm sure every single one of us in this virtual room have changed our behavior in terms of how we shop, right? I mean, we go to digital channels, we go to shops, and we want both in each channel. I think consumers have become digital first and digital by design. And it's so important for businesses also then to become digital by design and not just in one channel and so on. If I were to think about it, I think there are three buckets of disruption. The first one being the customer themselves, which is the demand side of the equation. The second one being the supply side, which is the entire fulfillment, etc. And the third one is about internal processes. So if I look at the customer side, the customer wants everything right now, right? Which is a good thing, all of us do. So they want a fantastic experience. They want speed, which basically means that every process related to speed in your enterprise needs to change. They need the lowest price, which means you need to have the right algorithms, right pricing, etc. You need options. So they want to be able to either pick up at the store, pick up in a locker, deliver at home. They want things to be personalized, right? Which targets you as a being, but most importantly with privacy in mind. Right? Privacy has become so key to everybody right now, and how ethical a company is and how much you trust a company with your data has become so absolutely key in this. Then if I look at the supply side of the equation, it really mirrors the customer side, right? Because if you need speed, then your entire fulfillment chain needs to change. Your planning needs to change. You have to have always on planning. You need to have dynamic fulfillment in order to actually plug into that and be able to deliver that speed. And then if you have to deliver that speed, it has to also be at your lowest cost. Right? So, and that means your entire ecosystem relating to fulfillment has to then mirror that and change. And that has got completely disrupted, right? How we used to think about fulfillment, how we used to think about last mile warehouses, and, even stores has warehouses. We thought store was something that was for shopping, right? But store has also become a fulfillment center now. Right? It's become an experience center now. So, I mean, the entire concept has now changed because of that. And then same way in the warehouses, right? Because again, if you need the speed and flexibility, you need robotics, you need everything else that is there. And across, you need data, you need visibility, right? If you need to have the right fulfillment, you need to have the right visibility into every part of that, which means data. If I go to the third bucket, which is your internal processes, that then mirrors the first two, right? Because then it's all about data. If you look at the customer and the fulfillment and demand and supply is two things, data actually flows between them completely in order to complete that. And that means a complete system integration, right? Previously, we had disconnected bits, nodes everywhere. How does that really connect has completely disrupted the way that we think internally. I'm a finance person, right? Finance has got completely disrupted because how do you look at forecasting? It's no longer every quarter, every year, right? It has to be always on, right? If you look at, scenario planning, how do you invest, right? How do you put up a store, right? Now it is all about, okay, what channel cannibalizes what channel? How does it really, I mean, how do you grow your share rather than it being actually taking up? So you can do so many good things with the data and the algorithms to actually see, should you invest, should you not invest? The same thing, then you need your procurement to change because these need to be flexible, right? Because you can't have the old contracts that go on for 10 years and 6 years in the same manner. So, I mean, I think everything, if you look at it as a chain, every part has disrupted the other in the retail side, all the way from the external perspective to the internal.
No, I think that's a great summary of Divya from how the industry should look at it. And many people I know think about this being a change in customer engagement or going online, but there's a holistic disruption all through, and I think it's covered very well. I would probably like Subbu, if you would like to cover a little bit more. And I know you're very enthusiastic about business models changing and stuff like that. Throw some light on that.
Thank you, Raj, for that, and excellent answer from Divya on the disruption in the industry. As you all know, the retail industry as such is growing exponentially, and where we are today, after the 2 waves, and the retail industry has tremendously grown, almost 93% to pre-COVID levels. But what is the change on the business models is earlier brand used to provide choices to consumers, and brand used to get to the customers, right? Today, customers are demanding choices to brands. So it is the other way around. And in this, as you see the retail industry, it's always, as a general trade where your kiranas and mom and pop stores, then you have the, modern trade with cash and carry, and later comes the, online avenues of, B2B, B2C, C2C, everything. So now all these models are, as Divya was talking about disruption, it's happening at every level, various level it's happening. And be it online to offline, especially with, COVID came in, people are not going to step out of the home. And there has to be, you order online, you pick up somewhere or someone come and deliver. That became a very, tremendous use case, and people lives were saved due to that, essentially, right? And now you're looking at, the online is only 3% of the overall retail, business, but that is, growing exponentially, especially the quick commerce, which is the grocery and things are, tremendously growing. And the direct to consumer, right? This is nobody expected that this is to be the case in India, but the D2C market is, growing as well, where opportunities are there. And who would expect your, the kirana store on your street is going to be massively transformed in terms of, digital payments, and B2B companies are offering, all, kinds of options for them to, improve their business. So the way I see is, there are multiple avenues of how the business models are emerging. There is no one dominant right now. Yes, there is a traditional retail model, the general trade model is there, but then brands are also kind of looking at it and see, how do we get to the customer, closer to the customer? How do I, involve in the demand shaping? How do I understand the, forecasting aspect much early on so that I can respond to the changes much faster, right? So these are some of the aspects of where the business models are evolving. And customers, is currently, I think I would say, being in India is going to be a very much consumer-centric market, and consumers are spoiled with choices, right? With all good avenues of choices, and companies are really innovating in this aspect, and we'll talk more about it. But these are some of my thoughts, Raj, in terms of how the business models itself is evolving.
Subbu, very, very good points, and I think what you covered in terms of the whole individual stores, kiranas as you call it, and the different the consumer good companies looking at direct to customer kind of initiatives, and they becoming part of the whole ecosystem, right? And hence the how do you then fulfill, how do you service, how do you stock, and things like that. So Akhil, maybe if you'd like to share your views, and especially around the new role of stores, how should one look at fulfillment, maybe cover that a little bit as well, and whatever else you would like.
Sure, Raj. See, one thing from a Walmart perspective, we've got 11,000 stores worldwide. right? So we've been a very store, physical, location intensive business for a very long time. And obviously we've shifted towards e-commerce, and we're doing a lot of sales on the e-commerce side of it. But for us, omni-channel becomes a very, very critical part of how we run our business, where we bring the best or our success and our strengths from a store perspective with what we're doing from a e-commerce perspective. So we're giving all these options to our customers. What we'll tell them is, it doesn't matter how you want to buy with us or where you want to buy with us from. We're going to give you the entire assortment. We're going to give you the entire experience as you would like it. You can walk into a store, buy from an aisle, or you can walk up to our kiosk, order something, get it delivered to our house. You can order online, pick it up from a store. You can do contactless pharmacy delivery at a store, where you go into the parking lot, an associate comes and puts your whatever you purchased into your car trunk, right? So it's completely contactless. Or you can say, deliver it to my house, but put it into a fridge, or put it into a post box, or just leave it by my door, and then I get a notification that it's been left at my door. And then we ensure that we have the entire returns as very seamless. It shouldn't matter where you bought it from, but if I have a Walmart store next to me, I can just go drop it there. I can even put it into a courier and send it back, or put it into a box and send it back. So we're creating all of these experiences just to ensure that the customer can get what she wants at whatever time she wants, and in whichever quantity she wants, and is also able to very easily return it. So there is a big tension reliever that we have, where we're saying that, hey, you might not want what you want after you got it, so you can always return it and things like that. But for us, all these experiences is not just the front end piece, right? It is not just about how you're able to shop, but it's also important how we are able to fulfill it. We need to ensure that we have the right promise. And whether a customer gets onto Google and searches and then finds something and says, this is available at this particular price, and it can get delivered in 2 days, and then they click on it, they should get to our site and the same promise should be available. So I need to ensure that all the way from where they're seeing it to the time I actually fulfill it, everything is correct. So for that, our inventory and fulfillment area needs to be extremely strong. And then I think that we also spoke about forecasting, right? Our forecasting needs to be extremely, extremely strong. We're talking about 500 million item store forecasts that we run almost on a daily basis, just to estimate what we need to buy and what we need to store and in which location that we need to do it. Right. And then when somebody walks into our store, what we are saying is, hey, we need to ensure that our associates, so we've got 2.2 million associates across the world, and most of them are store associates. We want to ensure that they're focusing on the customers, and they're not worried about technology. They're not worried about inventory. They're not worried about what's on the aisle. But we enable, or we ensure that technology enables all of them for them. For the associate, so that the associates can go focus on the customer. So that's our focus from a customer in a store experience perspective. Then obviously we've got things like scan and go, where you don't have to stand in a line at a POS and say that, hey, now somebody will scan my items that I purchased, but I can do it on my phone, or I can go to a scan machine which is there, and then I can do it, and I can just pay either using my cards, or I can pay sometimes using cash, or if it's just like a UPI kind of payment. But all of these are some things that we're enabling in the store to ensure that we have a great experience for our customer from an end-to-end retail perspective, the entire journey point of view.
No, I think I was talking to somebody, one of a large retail chain, and I was talking, it's practically empowering the customer, right? Customer experience becoming empowering in when they want, what they want, how they want. And I think, and I think I like the part where everybody spoke a bit about the fulfillment. Sometimes it never gets mentioned as much as it should be. What kind of preparedness, fulfillment needs to happen for this to be successful? It's not just putting up a website or e-commerce or a mobile app and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's a very great that we could really cover that. I think with that, I probably also ask Akhil to please continue and then tell us, because the scale we are talking of, and you need it to be personalized, you need to be adapted for each order, you need to be adapted for every scenario, every customer, and you need to adapt very fast, like you're mentioning. So how do you see technology enabling this, and what's the new areas of technology which is enabling you to do this? Because I'm sure that's a whole lot of initiative that you're personally driving.
Yeah, and the fact that we are having this panel discussion, Raj, means that technology is a very critical part of enabling retail or every other industry that we have right now, correct? So, but if you talk about trends, I mean, every part of technology plays a role. Like if you're talking about IoT, how IoT plays a role in ensuring my entire supply chain, I have it under control. I know what's happening, not just on the frozen goods, but everything in terms of where are my items at which point of time, at what temperature are they stored, are they fresh or not, when are they going to get delivered? All of those aspects I can track it. Of course, then you have blockchain to ensure that we have the security aspects of it and all of those things. But what's getting very interesting in every part of the retail journey is the AI ML piece of it, right? And that is driving most of the decisions that we take within the retail journey, whether it is about identifying which customers are we going to target or acquire, or where are we going to put our ads so that we get the best kind of revenue, all the way to inventory forecasting and fulfillment and last mile. And for example, a customer lands onto my web page, then what do I need to show in the search result? Where is the relevancy coming in from? How do I personalize it? If I can figure out where the customer's location is, I can show the items which are available in the store or the fulfillment center nearby at the top of the list so they can get those things faster. Right? We can organize it based on all of those things. So ML plays a very, very critical role in how we are able to personalize the journey for the customer, how we are able to take care of them, right? And then there are the other aspects like augmented reality, virtual reality. Now, we've heard about augmented reality, virtual reality in the fashion circles, obviously, right? You can try your dress on, and then you can see what it is. One of the things we just recently released was on the pharmacy side of it. So, for example, if you want glasses, what you do is you put up your prescription. You scan your prescription, upload it into the site. Through using OCR, we will read everything that is required to be read and what we need to do. And then we show you a bunch of spectacles that you can actually try on virtually on the mobile app or on the web page, right? And then you can order it automatically and then it gets delivered home. So in the last 18 months, due to the pandemic, you've seen people hesitant to walk out to a store to connect with somebody, especially when it comes to pharmacy and things like that, because you don't know who is coming before you or who's coming after you and things like that. So we are using technology to enable this and make it a lot more comfortable for our customers. And especially for senior citizens, this is something that is really, really helpful for them. So they can figure out what size fits them and what's the kind of prescription glasses you want. We enable all of it. And then, of course, as I was talking earlier, we also have the return. So we're saying that, hey, you can always come back if it doesn't work for you. So these are some examples of technology that we've seen will enable a lot of different use cases in terms of customer experience, and it also ensuring that we meet with the needs of the customer as soon as even before they even want something like that.
No, absolutely. And I think to earlier point when we are discussing was about how COVID has completely accelerated and made people adopt necessarily the most open to technology. They also have started adopting that. And so it's indeed great. Subbu, do you want to cover quickly on the role of commerce, especially different business models as far as commerce goes, and from a technology standpoint or anything else that you see as a part of your role?
Sure, Raj. I think Akhil covered a very broad variety of items, and especially, these days nobody can touch, go without saying AI and ML, right? Everything is, driven by data. The decision making, everything is now automated. I want to pick up on one part that Akhil mentioned about the supply chain, right? So one thing which is very evident right now is you cannot have this constrained supply chain, right? It has to be very dynamic supply chain, because the forecasting, as I said, is changing, the demand is changing, the customers are moving. So how do you build a consistent supply chain experience? As you rightly pointed out, only one part is about the visualization or Jazzy website, but the heart or the mission which delivers everything is behind the scene, right? And that dynamic supply chain is very, very important for retail businesses to focus on applying technology. I think there are several innovations that Walmart has done, IKEA has done, and all. And the other aspect in e-commerce is also why do you look at this supply chain is because of the speed, the cost ability, the quality, the innovation coming around that, right? So I can take about one scenario in Japan, and in Rakuten did this in a very short time, during the COVID, because people in this mountainous region, majority of them, as Japan are aging population, they are not able to get out and buy things from the stores, and in a matter of 3 to 4 months, we put together a drone development, which is completely done from here, and then we worked with the partners, and we were able to deliver some necessary goods to the drone, and this drone went through the mountainous areas and then able to deliver essentially, right? So I think the disruption and all these environment that is forced forcing us to, really look at what are the area of innovation, where do we apply technology. IoT is a great use case that Akhil talked about, as well as the blockchain, because today, we have visibility from farm to your fork, right? And that blockchain enables that. Then we clearly know basically where is a challenge or where is a problem in terms of whether it's a supply chain breaking down or is some terms of any kind of a breakout of some disease or something. How do we know where exactly it is? Right? This is going to be a very important aspect of the retail overall supply chain, and that's where I think technology is going to be really playing. And last one thing I would say is essentially this whole Kirana shop coming into play, right? The B2B models are helping a lot, right? Even in India, the companies which are helping in B2B space, they are completely looking at digitizing, like what Akhil talked about. You as a Walmart employee just focus on customers. Similarly, these companies are asking this Kirana shop to focus on the business that they want to run. Every aspect of business, whether you're sourcing or procurement, or even your shelf design, as well as inventory management, your financial accounting, everything is taken care. And then the logistics aspect. Now, that is where I think all aspect of this journey in terms of, from a business perspective and the customer perspective is clearly, getting into technology, being augmenting every aspect of it in order to improve this business, right? So that is where I see technology playing a very level playing field, bringing, Kirana stores also part of this ecosystem. And the good thing is, there are government, help in terms of policy, which we did not mention a lot, about now. The retail and wholesale is coming part of this MSME, which allows, to come to, loan, financial credit coming in, even this B2B players, offering innovative credit solutions, because earlier that was not available for business to, bank on. So those are some aspects which is really helping in terms of how, innovation and technology is helping the retail business here.
No, absolutely. I think both Akhil and Subbu, you covered. I mean, it's practically becoming a platform. We call it that there's an ecosystem and there's a platform which is orchestrating. So business is as much becoming that, and to do that at scale, I repeat. I think, Divya, you have been listening to quite a bit of that. Do you want to reflect? And especially if you could, or you'd like to cover aspects of data more than, while all this is good, you already covered aspects of security, data sovereignty, data governance, data, how much of personal information and things. So do you want to cover that and give us your view on the technology that?
Absolutely, Raj. And also I have a reflection, so I started my life as a finance person. I went into analytics, I went into strategy, and then I was in technology firms a large part of this time, right? And as the data head sometimes. Where I sit today, right, is I look at myself as a digital person and as much a tech person, because I find the lines have blurred completely. There is nothing called digital, there's nothing called business, right? If every business person is not a digital and tech person, then our business will not succeed, because there's really, no line between them. And we as the digital management team right now sit in every business discussion. Right? Because there is absolutely no line any longer. Every business decision needs technology right now. And that has been a huge change, I think, in the last few years that has happened. And we at IKEA have gone through now 3 years of digital transformation, which is digital technology, data. And to your point, Raj, of data, right? Everything I was speaking about earlier and what Akhil has been speaking about, Subbu's been speaking about, I think comes back to actually core technology and infrastructure and architecture of a company from a technology perspective, because agility has become so key and so core. And companies like us, which are, 78 years old, right? Technology has grown over time, right? And over a period of time, it is not exactly the most flexible technology that exists. Absolutely. Correct. Unlike the new native, digital companies that have arisen, which means that you actually need to unbundle a lot of things inside the technology and make it in so much more compartmentalized, because the technology today is not going to be the same as technology 5 years later. It's not going to be the same 5 years later. Things have are changing so fast. So I think the core to any of what you're talking about, the data or, AI or anything, has actually become about how do you set the architecture in a way that firstly allows for flexibility and adaptability, two, allows for flow of data into any system at any time how you want it, without actually replicating it, without compromising data privacy, without doing any of those things. So that is really, pretty much core. If I look at, if I again talk about those 3 buckets that I was saying, In the customer thing, it has become so key to have a single view of the customer.
Right.
Now, the customer shops in so many different channels, right? And data is collected in different ways in different places, right? And it has been a struggle for most companies to try and make sure that the data is synthesized in the right manner, with the right, indexation, with the right flow, to make sure that you actually know who's shopping where, right? What do they want? If you need to personalize, you need to know that. Second is that storage of data has become so key of this customer information, because it's not just about GDPR and different privacy laws in different countries. Companies want you to be ethical, and especially somebody like IKEA is known for its values, which means that in data, ethics then needs to come before everything else. So it's also about ethics by design, right? So everything you build an app, you build an interface, you build a thing, your first thought process is how do you give the customer the choice, right? So this is not about opting out, it's about opting in to share data, right? Even if it compromises your business and so on and so forth. But technology plays a huge role in that, because you need to really engineer it such that you can actually get that information in the right manner, at the same time give the customers the power and choice. And it's a balance and a bit of a tug of war, right? Because you can't, to have both at the same time. I think also it is about giving the customer really choices. So for example, we invested in a visual AI company. So I'm also in charge of acquisitions for digital. And we acquired a company called Geomagical in the US, which is basically does a visual AI. If you look at how customers really shop now, people used to come to the store to do planning, right? Because we do complex wardrobe planning, complex kitchen planning, right? All that has now, they want to sit in their houses and do, but you can't do this easily, right? So, I mean, you need tools like, going back to Akhil's point on where AI plays a role. It's not just in basic data that we think of, but also in things like this, where you actually hear the customer is able to take a photo of their house, and then they're able to remove pieces of furniture and add our own furniture in. But that actually requires such complex technology at the back of it. And, visual AI at the back of it, that how do you give those choices and empower, like you mentioned the word before, right? Empower the customer, but, give them choices through technology. I think the other thing is that, there are basic technology that have been around for a while, like NLP or, all the chatbots, etc. I think the value is really being realized now, right? Because when these technologies are combined together in a manner, previously they were individually there. And now we're starting to see the value of actually bringing them all together to actually in customer centers, in other places, to really bring out the value. Then if I look at, the fulfillment area, here again, data is key, right? Because the data needs to flow between the customer and the warehouse. And then inside that, for what we were speaking about earlier, the dynamic fulfillment and so on and so forth, it's important to have the data and constantly feed the data of that. So you need cost data inside it. You need, availability data inside it. You need the customer data inside it. You need the pricing data. There is so much data that needs to come together, but with the AI and with the machine learning algorithms constantly at the back. And then you have the bias in it, right? And that's why technology, it is again going back to the data and the ethics. There is also then AI ethics in this whole thing, because the algorithms are really learning from data that is already a little biased, right? So how do you adjust for it? So we constantly say human-centered technology, right? Because this is not about using technology blindly. This is about how do you put the human at the center, be conscious of bias, and give the human the choice to say yes or no to what the machine is really recommending. And that plays both in the customer as well as the fulfillment area to a very large extent. And then of course you have the internal process where RPA, AI, we are slowly seeing blockchain picking up in the procurement area now, little by little. I mean, it's taken a very long time to, from those shiny days earlier to, to now, but we are finally seeing that in the procurement, people are starting to use that and so on. So.
Yeah, right. Actually, blockchain is so much about ecosystem using it rather than every organization, right? So, I mean, that's where when everybody starts adopting is when you start seeing the value. But very, very interesting aspects. And we at Sonata were looking at this, that when you try to refresh yourselves, what's the platform model? What's the platform characteristics in terms of technology that you should have? And how do you then synthesize this together to work for the business, right? And some concept of even like responsible development of technology, where you are putting ethics in front, you're putting some sound business practices up front, because in the long run, that's what's going to probably work in terms of having faith of the consumer. So that's, I think it's a good segue into all this plethora of technologies, all these new things to be done, some recreated, refreshed, and some to be dismantled, kept away and things. So how does one look at the talent strategy, skill development, because that's another aspect which is becoming a constraint. And how does one organize, like Divya mentioned, they are now part of every meeting from a business perspective. So Subbu, from what are your views on that?
Sure, Raj, thank you. I think, as we all know today, the market condition, right? There is a big talent war happening, companies are struggling to really, get people into that and qualified people, right? So I think, in my aspect, what I look at it essentially, we have to really, the reason this is happening is there is huge demand and the supply for qualified people are not there essentially, right? And if you look at our whole education ecosystem, we are, 20, 30, 40 years back in terms of bringing these, data science or AR, ML or blockchain or any emerging technologies to the college. Companies are spending time to, get the postgraduates post their graduation, train them for 6 months or a year. Then for them to become an expert, it takes time. It's not easy. And a very happy point that, what Divya mentioned today, we all, data is not new oil. Data is the new air. It's like an oxygen. Every company operates with that. Now, how do you develop ethical aspect of this data, right? How do you, because you're bringing a new set of people with new set of eyes to look at it and all. How do you? So I think from the talent strategy perspective, companies really have to see, where do I grow? Should I shift left all the way, go to the college, collaborate with colleges, and probably establish curriculum that will help for industries. So that these, because you cannot find it out in the market because there are limited choices there. But how do you then enhance the development of talent within the new graduates coming in, with all these emerging technologies coming into play? Industries have to move towards the college, work collaboratively with the colleges and the education department and things to augment and enhance this, the whole curriculum. So that when the people are coming out of the college, they have good experience and exposure of what is expected of the market, and then they can definitely contribute towards this ecosystem, and also contribute to the business, to the growth, right? So that is where I think the whole skill development, the talent strategy should be surrounded that. Yes, there are some short-term aspect you can look at it and then go and play, but I think in the long run, with all this explosion of business happening in retail space, each of them, because even if you look at the delivery aspect, the gig economy, where we have workforce which are not permanent, it's right. And how do you look at them and then provide necessary skill set for them to train and then for them to move from one area of work to other area of work, be it the supply chain or last mile delivery and all. So I think the whole aspect of looking at this in the entire supply chain of where the talent is originating, how do we enhance them, how do we then put them in the right use of data and technology, and build that as for a business is something which really need to be focused upon, and companies have to come together to solve this. It's not a one company's or one business, and company as a consortium has come together, especially forum like NASTech can definitely help in this journey to really look at that and augment that.
No, Subbu, very interesting. And I think one of the key things you covered very crisply was the alignment of what you need versus what you can get out, right? And you need blockchain, but if you don't have enough of it, you don't have enough of that. That's where it causes the thing, as well as what you do with the existing workforce. So, I mean, Divya, I know you're working with a larger ecosystem, and you have, obviously, there's a whole startup ecosystem. We are blessed to have that much around us. How do you see we working with this to enable that, right? To work with the whole ecosystem around us. Subbu covered the core talent, but there's a whole larger ecosystem. How do you look at that, and one should probably approach that?
Yes, Raj, I think, we've become so dependent on each other now. I don't think any company can be in isolation any longer. And also, every company can't do everything by themselves. There is so much technology, new technology coming up. There is so much of, frankly, very innovative ideas coming up, right, in different places, that if you don't partner, if you don't, tie up with others, you probably will be much slower to the game than anybody else. So previously in IKEA, we used to have, make versus buy used to be either make yourself or procure. Right now, make versus buy is completely changed. It's about, okay, can you acquire? Can you invest? Right? We have an investment arm. Can you invest in a company which is really, exciting enough and which really goes with our values and with, with what we want to do, so that you can then encourage them to and give them the platform to scale, right? And then work together well, or do you form strategic partnerships where you can really co-innovate with somebody else, right? And get the right, towards a common end that you have in mind. And then, of course, even your normal procurement, like I was saying earlier, has really changed. So one of my roles is also to lead all the partnerships. And I find that out of all the vendors, so-called vendors we used to have, right, we are slowly changing all of them towards different kinds of partnerships, right? Where it's no longer where you're both invested in the game, you're both really, trying to innovate together and do different things. And so if I were to take, some examples, so we have something called the Venture Capital Council, of which I'm a part of globally to actually invest. And we've actually looked at companies with certain criteria. So going back to what Subbu said, it's about needs, right? So where are those white spaces in your area that you really feel that somebody else could do, is doing very well, or there is a new idea there that you really want to test, you want to learn, you want to imbibe into yourself, right? And so we really actually invest. So we do minority investments in those kind of companies, and sometimes majority investments. So I was speaking about the acquisition we did of this of Geomagical Labs. We've also invested in a company for the returns, like what Akhil was talking about earlier, right? Because that's such a big space. It's about how do you use data for the returns, both not just for not just for the returns in terms of experience of the customer, but also how do you recycle those returns after that? So what's that end to end of the returns? Because that's a huge problem in the industry right now, right? Then we've also invested in a company in logistics that actually uses, really good data and technology at the heart of it to really do quite a bit of it. So we're really looking at those white spaces where we can tie up, and also with startups. Right. I mean, we are with different startup ecosystems out there trying to look at who can really partner with us, help, who can we test and learn, and in different countries. So there is also a local element to this, right? Absolutely. Because every country really needs something a little different from another country. And because of which we've also tried to see who can we partner with in different countries which have very specific problems, right? Where you don't want to build something very global out there that you're pushing out to them, but where you're actually partnering locally with somebody and taking in the good parts of it. So I think the entire model is changing. And if I look 10 years into the future, I really think this is going to be hugely disruptive, because right now we're also just starting the sharing of data. Right. I mean, previously people were so protective about their data, right? It was always about, if we share our data, that is like, it's your uniqueness, right, of your thing. But we slowly find, especially in geographical areas, that the more customer data, and I'm talking about, not the actual customer data, but the more trends data that you really share with each other, we're slowly finding the ecosystem becoming more open to sharing those trends, sharing things that they feel are challenges, so that we tackle it together rather than each one doing it individually.
No, absolutely. And I think I was just speaking to some of the folks who were running large. They are saying that it's practically become a federation of organization catering to a need, right? And bringing innovation continuously so that this federation is winning. So that's kind of the whole thing which is coming around. Now that's great. Akhil, from your perspective, I know that Indian GCCs have a huge role to play, right? And I think more so from whatever little I know of that is that apart from scale and talent availability and things, it's also about driving innovation. So how do you see the evolving role of the GCCs, the global captive centers in India, and playing their role in the overall game worldwide, like Divya and Subbu was mentioning, in the worldwide scheme of things?
Right, Raj. So in the last couple of decades, right, GCCs and the role GCCs play in global organizations really changed. We started being back office centers, doing some execution work, and slowly the value ownership grew. But now that if you take a cross section of GCCs, to a large extent, we're talking about delivering value. We're talking about people having ownership, people actually contributing to the top line or to the bottom line and holding global responsibilities from here. So it's become like any other location which is there, whether the parent company sits in Europe or in Asia or in the US, it doesn't matter, but we're having strong global roles and global responsibilities which are being driven from here, which basically means that the focus on innovation that we need to have is almost similar to what you would expect from any location in the world. It is no longer the fact that innovation happens only in startups or local companies where you have an opportunity to go do all of those things, but GCCs have become a very important part of how we innovate within global organizations which are there. And we do a lot of things, but a couple of things which doesn't work for us so well. I mean, for example, in Divya's case, I think it works because IKEA has got stores here, right? I mean, then you're planning to grow here locally. So it helps you to ensure your associates understand the business so well. But from a Walmart perspective, we don't really have retail stores here. We've got our B2B best price stores here, which are limited, but it's only one small part of our business. A large part of our business sits in the other hemisphere, which is there. So for us, what I believe is this: if you want to innovate, you need to understand the business. You cannot innovate without understanding the business. To understand the business, you need to get your hands dirty. You need to be involved in it. You need to be sitting with your business, understanding it. While we do a lot of things on Zoom, we do a lot of things on these connects and stuff. Before the pandemic, we used to travel quite a bit to make it happen. But now that has reduced. So we are using technology in order to ensure that our associates understand a lot more about retail, a lot more about our processes, how things work. So we've got recorded sessions, we do live sessions where we walk them through distribution centers, through the stores, make them connect with the customers, make them connect with the associates and all of that. And hopefully, as things normalize, we get travel back on and people get there. But that's the first part where we expect our associates to understand the business, understand what are the gaps that we have or what are the things that we can get better at and how do we innovate as part of it. The other thing what we've said is innovation cannot be a central team anymore. It needs to be part of every single team. It needs to be part of our day-to-day activity. You cannot say that, hey, I'll think about innovation in March, then I'll think about it in June or in November, right? I mean, it's not going to be like a hackathon, which people used to align with innovation earlier. They say, I innovate 3 times a year. That's not going to happen. Innovation is like you do it every single day. So what we've also done is we're trying to enable it through infrastructure. We're saying that, hey, you need access to infrastructure to go try something out, to play something out. Here it is. Go do it. You need some help. These are the experts. Go talk to them. We'll enable it to you. If you have an idea, put it out there. Let's have a discussion and we'll bring the business in. So the business can start thinking about how do I move this into production? What is more important to me as an engineer than seeing my idea get into production and being used by our customers? And that cycle, if you're able to take it from the beginning to the end, will enable innovation more within the organization. And that we are able to do it even within GCCs at this point of time, just within the organization or globally with the parent organizations or other locations. So I think innovation really has caught on, and most of the companies that I know within India are really focused on it, and it's become part and parcel of your culture nowadays.
I mean, I was just reflecting, I was thinking we do CI/CD, right? It can be now said that continuous innovation, continuous deployment, rather than doing it twice a year or once a year. Now, very, very interesting. I really enjoyed the conversation. I think key things that came out is, I think the 3 parts. One is the changes in the business model, right? Necessitated by as much in the back end, as much, which I think got as much in the front end to give that kind of customer experience. The whole planning, fulfillment, warehousing, how to get the intelligence of all this information together and then bind it together. And for that, I think many of us covered, Subbu covered, Divya covered that. How do you reimagine the technology aspects of this to do that, but do it responsibly in a manner and which is future-proof, and then engage the whole ecosystem. One is talent, college grads, and then alignment. How do you align the whole ecosystem of the startups, continuously innovate? And to Akhil's point, look at, I think Akhil covered a very interesting point towards the end, which was that appreciation of the business, because sometimes the technology, and people don't know technology get isolated from the business, so the innovation gets stopped because you don't know how to, what problems to solve, right? You solve the wrong problems or things. So I think that, and bringing that at the scale with something like a captive center, I think very, very interesting conversation. Thank you for your wisdom today. I personally enjoyed every bit of that, hearing from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Raj, for having us. Thanks, Divya and Akhil.
Thanks. Thanks.
Enjoy the conversation.
Thanks, Subbu, Akhil, Divya. Thanks.
Thanks. Thank you, Raj, for chairing this session. And thank you, Divya, Akhil, and Subbu for throwing light on how digital transformation and innovation are disrupting the retail sector.